Hello, everyone. It's me, Mr. Macaluso, broadcasting live from the First National Bank of the United States in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I thought I'd wear a little skiing themed t-shirt just because of the snow day. Hope you're all enjoying it. Hope you get some outside time. Take in some of that freshy fresh pow pow. Anyway, today our goal is to finish talking about the U.S., the First National Bank of the United States. Sorry. We started talking about this the other day, and I've got more to say. As we left off on my last lecture, I pointed out to you the simple fact that every time I bring up anything in this class as a potential solution for a problem, we always know that it's going to lead to more problems. This is the nature of humanity, I think. Anyway, so today that's what we're going to talk about. We talked about why Alexander Hamilton thought the bank was a good idea for the economy, right? Namely, he thought that a national currency would help the economy. Check. He thought that a place for the government to deposit surplus funds would also stimulate the economy because the bank could then loan those funds out. Check. And lastly, he thought that a large national bank would be able to give out big loans to help American manufacturing get off the ground. Check. Okay, so those are the three big ones. There's probably others that you could think of, but those are three pretty solid reasons why Hamilton thinks this should be a national bank. Okay, now here's the problem. When Washington hears Hamilton's idea, he's not sure whether the national bank is actually constitutional or not. Okay, now I've said this before. George Washington has, he has some pretty strong qualities as a leader. And one of them, I think, is this. He realizes that he's not the brains behind this operation. Alexander Hamilton is smarter than he is. Okay. He also realizes that Thomas Jefferson, who is his Secretary of State, is also a really smart guy. And he also knows that these two guys don't like each other. They don't personally like each other, and they don't see eye to eye politically. So Washington says to both of his secretaries, Secretary of the Treasury Hamilton, Secretary of the Treasury Jefferson, he says, give me your best argument as to why this bank is actually constitutional. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to talk about, is whether or not this bank is constitutional. And then we'll talk about how Jefferson feels about the bank. Hint, he feels angry about the bank. Okay, but let's get to the constitutional questions. Do you recall, I hope you do, before break, you may have found this class excruciating, but I had the class as a group read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution out loud. Do you recall? I put it up on the screen in good old 225. And we went around the table and everyone was supposed to read one of the paragraphs of Article 1, Section 8. You might recall, hopefully you do. If you don't, write it down. Article 1, Section 8 is known as the, Natalie? That's right, Natalie. Natalie always gets it right. It's the enumerated powers, okay? And so can anyone tell me what the first enumerated power is in Article 1, Section 8? Yeah, okay. You raise your hands next time, but yeah, you're right. It's obvious, right? It's the most important power, which is the power to tax. Okay. Anyone remember any other of the rights that Julia? Yes, that's a good one, right? Patents, right? Congress can set the laws governing patents and also weights and measures. That, yes, that's true. Carly, thank you. Any other ones out there? Jay? Why, Jay? That's right. Naturalization. That's one of the powers that Congress has to create laws governing how you become a citizen. Anyone closer to the top of the list? Anyone? Mia? Yeah, that's right. Borrowing money is one of the big powers. Good job, Mia. Excellent. Anyone else? Yes. Who said that? I can't tell with your masks on. Uh, Madison? Was that you, really, Madison? Anna, was that really Madison? Okay, I guess so. Yeah, that's right. That's a good one, Madison. Coining money is also one of the powers that Congress has. Remember, there are 17 different paragraphs, so there's a lot of powers. But those are the ones I want to talk about right now. So anyway, does anyone remember the power to create a bank or to charter a national bank? Was that one of the ones we read? If you're remembering that it was, then you're remembering incorrectly, because it doesn't say that. Article 1, Section 8 does not say explicitly that Congress has the power to charter a bank. However, I left off paragraph 18 when we read, right? I don't think I read this. Here it is. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to put it on the screen. Let me move inside. There we go. Oh, it's much warmer in here. So here's Article 1, Section 8, paragraph 18. It says, I'm going to practice my reading skills right now. It says, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. Okay, now, so good reading, Mr. Macaluso. What does that mean, though? Well, the word foregoing, let me highlight the word foregoing for you. What does that word mean? That's not a word that most of you ever use. Foregoing, anyone want to guess? Nigel, do you want to guess for me? Of course you know Nigel. Yeah, foregoing just means the things that came before, right? So if this is paragraph 18 of Section 8, what came before? There were 17 paragraphs, right? And what does that mean? That means that Congress can make any law that is necessary and proper to carrying out those foregoing powers. Okay, so Hamilton argues that this clause, which we also know as, and write this down, we also know this as the elastic clause, right, which you'll see why in a second. The elastic clause allows Congress, according to Hamilton, to create a national bank, because what would a national bank be necessary to do? Or why would it be necessary? Well, it would be necessary if Congress wanted to coin money, which it does. Would a national bank be the proper instrument to help it issue banknotes? That is, to coin money? Yes, a bank would be very useful there. How about for borrowing money? Would we want a national bank to help us facilitate borrowing money? Yes, a national bank would be very useful for that as well. It could issue bonds for the government, okay? And then lastly, if we are taxing, which we have the power to do, we collect that tax. Again, as I said the other day, we can't just put it underneath George Washington's mattress. We need to put it someplace. So a national bank would be a necessary and proper place to put it. Okay, does everyone see that argument? Okay, so Hamilton's argument is yes, a national bank is constitutional, even though it is not in the enumerated powers. It is covered by the elastic clause, otherwise known as the necessary and proper clause, right? You see the words right there in the clause, the necessary and proper clause. And it's also known as the implied powers clause, okay? That is, this power is not explicit, it is implied, okay? So that's Hamilton's argument, okay? It's a pretty good one, okay? However, Jefferson, Hamilton's nemesis, has his own argument, right? And Jefferson's argument goes like this. He says, well, it's not an explicitly given power in the Constitution, and the 10th Amendment says the following: the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. Okay, so by the way, if you should paraphrase that. You should write that into your notes right now. Go ahead, Jack, pick up your pen. Write that down. Yeah, come on, you can do it. He never does it. Anyway, you should also write down, the previous one. So if you need to go back, I'll put the slide back, and you can pause and copy that. But anyway, let's get to the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment says this, and it's basically saying if there's a power that wasn't specifically given to the national government in the Constitution, and if it wasn't specifically prohibited to go to the states, then it goes to the states. Okay, now, once again, was chartering a national bank specifically given to the national government? It was not. Was it prohibited to the states? It's not. So who gets it? According to Jefferson, it goes to the states. Okay, now that's weird. The Constitution is contradictory. Not really that weird. I mean, the Constitution holds multitudes, doesn't it? There's plenty of great documents in the world that are contradictory. Okay, and here's one of them. Now, that leaves it to George Washington to decide, he's the tie-breaking vote. Is it constitutional or not? Think about it. George Washington. Nancy, are you thinking about it? Okay, good. George Washington was the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. What do you think George Washington often wakes up in the middle of the night having nightmares about? Anyone? Yeah, Ryan. Ryan, just press pause and go. It's being videotaped. You don't have to ask. Just pause and go. But can you answer first? Yeah, good job, Ryan. Yeah, George Washington, as commander-in-chief of the Army, he had to fight a war against the most powerful nation on earth with basically no supplies, no ammunition. His soldiers never got paid because Congress wasn't very strong, right? Do you think George Washington wants a strong central government now that he's president? Does he have the experience that tells him that it's really necessary to have a strong central government if you want to get anything done? I think so. So Washington is going to side with Hamilton because he knows a national bank is going to make the government stronger. Tyrannical? He doesn't think so. He thinks just strong enough to actually get things done. Okay. Of course, Jefferson will think this is a step towards tyranny. Okay. So let's move on to the second part of this lecture, which is this. We already know why Hamilton thinks a national bank is a good idea. We now know why Hamilton thinks a national bank is a constitutional idea. We know why Jefferson thinks it's unconstitutional. Now let's cover why Jefferson thinks it's just a bad idea in general. And I just stated a second ago, his number one reason, which is this. He thinks a national bank is going to allow the national government to become tyrannical. That is, the government is going to get too powerful. Okay, so let me try to explain. As we said in our last lecture, this national bank that Hamilton has designed is going to be partially owned by the national government, right? I think I told you that. I hope I told you that. Yeah, the idea is this. The national bank is going to be capitalized at $10 million. It's a joint stock company, so there'll be people giving the bank money by buying stock, and the government's going to buy 20% of that stock, which is $2 million. I think I may have just said $20 million, but it's a $10 million capitalization, and the federal government is going to invest $2 million into it. Okay, now that makes the national government the largest shareholder in the bank. It's not a majority shareholder, but still, as the largest shareholder, it's going to be able to call the shots, right? It's going to have the most say in what the bank does. Now, imagine that I am the president of the United States, something I imagine quite a bit, frankly. And let's say that I have political enemies, right? Obviously, I would, okay? So could I use the national bank to hurt my political enemies? Well, I think I could. So let's think about it. So let's see. Siobhan, let's use you as an example, right? Let's say that Siobhan ran against me in the last election and I just barely won. Am I a little worried that Siobhan might beat me next time around? I am. Okay. So here's what I do. If Siobhan ever asks for a loan from the National Bank, or better yet, if some of Siobhan's followers ask for a loan, I could maybe direct the National Bank to deny them those loans. That would be bad, right? Let's say that one of Siobhan's followers, just someone in Siobhan's party, has a great idea for a business and wants to take out a loan to start that business. The National Bank gets wind that this character is close to Siobhan, and so the National Bank says, like, no, denied. We're not going to give you a loan. Okay, that's bad for that guy, right? Might that guy even change his political alliance just so he can get the loan? That's a possibility, right? At any rate, that is way too much power for a president to have. A president shouldn't be, deciding who the winner or the loser is. That should just be left up to, the banker, right? So Jefferson's really worried that the Federalists, which is the political party that is coming into being, and that George Washington is the head of, right? Alexander Hamilton is the head of and the founder of, that party could use the bank to hurt its enemies and help its friends. And that's just too much power. Okay. Another reason Jefferson doesn't like it is he fears that a large bank, that any bank really, but the larger the bank, the more power that bank will have, that banks tend to take advantage of the little guy. Okay, now, despite the fact that Jefferson is a plantation owner and a slaveholder, Jefferson is a champion of the yeoman farmer, right? He really, really, really wants a country of yeoman farmers. We've talked about this before. This is where the Land Ordinance of 1785 came in, okay? He's afraid that that yeoman farmer is going to quickly get himself indebted to a national bank, right? It's human nature, right? Do we often want things that we don't need? Yeah, I think so. Will yeoman farmers get seduced by the national bank? In other words, will the national bank say, like, hey, 160 acres, that's not enough for you. You need more than self-sufficiency. You need more. Take out a big loan and get some more acreage under your belt. What do you say, fellas? Will a lot of people, yeoman farmers included, fall victim to that? Jefferson thinks so, and before you know it, those self-sufficient farmers will be indebted to the national bank, and as soon as you're indebted, are you self-sufficient anymore? Not really. You've got to work for the man, that is the bank. And he's worried about this, right? I think Jefferson's got a point. You guys are too young to remember the financial crisis of 2008. I'm not that young, so I remember it. And in fact, that financial crisis was largely created by the fact that, millions of Americans were buying houses that were more expensive than what they could afford. They were taking out loans that were too big for them to pay off. And they did it because they thought, well, I'll buy this really expensive house, even though I can't afford it, but the value of the house will keep going up and up and up. And eventually I can refinance, and it's complicated. I don't want to get into all the details. And I'll make money off of this. And that was working for people for a while until all of a sudden one day it didn't work for people and the value of houses started going down. And if you've just taken out a huge loan that you can't afford for something that's now not worth the amount of loan you took out, you're in a really bad position. Okay. In fact, I remember we were living in a very small house in 2007, and I remember a mortgage broker came to my house at my invitation to try to convince me to buy a bigger and more expensive house. And I remember saying, but I can't afford that mortgage. And he looked at me like I was a total idiot. And he said, like, yeah, but don't worry, the value of that house is going to double in like 2 years and you're going to be a millionaire. And I heard the voice of my father and the voice of my father-in-law behind me saying, like, don't do this thing. Don't be an idiot. And I listened, and guess what? Those voices were sometimes the voices I hear in my head are correct. They were right, because the next year the economy totally fell apart, and I would have been living in the Volvo wagon down by the river if I had taken that mortgage out. So I'm glad I didn't. Anyway, Jefferson is afraid that banks will do that. They'll get people to take out loans that they shouldn't take out, and that will get rid of that self-sufficient yeoman farmer. And what would those yeoman farmers become? They would basically be serfs to the national bank, right? Debt slaves to the national bank. And he doesn't want that. Okay, so those are two really good reasons why Jefferson thinks a national bank is a bad idea. Here's a third one. Third one is this. Hamilton thinks a national bank will lead to more industrialism in America. What does Jefferson think of industrialism? He thinks it's a bad idea. Why? He wants yeoman farmers. If you have more factories, you have more factory workers. Are factory workers self-sufficient? Of course not. What happens when there's an economic downturn? They get laid off. Can they feed themselves and their families if they get laid off from a factory? No. Whereas if there's an economic downturn and you're a yeoman farmer without any debt, can you feed your families with your farm? Of course. You don't care about making money. All you care about is, growing crops, making a little whiskey on the side, going fishing, stuff like that. You know what I mean? So this is why Jefferson thinks a national bank is a bad idea, not just an unconstitutional idea. Anyway, that's all I got today. I hope you enjoyed your snow day, and I hope to see you soon. I should be back on Wednesday. All right. Ta-ta.